Hello, this is Jeff Larson, and for my software review for ITEC 816, I'm going to review some software that will complement a piece of hardware, which I will cover in the hardware review down the road. So just for a little bit of context, the space I'm working around designing and thinking for is called the Stephen and Nicholas Leondakis Center for Innovation and Design, which is kind of the long-winded title for our new collaborative art, design, and hopefully engineering type space at Balboa High School. So one of the pieces of equipment or several of the pieces of equipment that I envision being in the space are CNC routers and carvers and laser cutters, etc. And so what I've focused on here is the software that will complement what is known as the Carvey. And the Carvey is a introductory level self-enclosed kind of 3D carving unit, great for kind of an entry level point into some of those other areas. But I'm going to focus on the software that accompanies it in this review. The software that they offer is called Easel. They have a free version and a pro version, both of which are connected to an online account. So it's web-based software that's connected to the device and the machine, but the software itself is essentially vector-based graphic software, a very simple layout program. And I thought it's a really good piece of software in terms of introducing all types of learners to vector-based imagery and kind of basic layout. And then there's some notions of like the different kinds of projects that could be done, but I see it primarily as a great place to introduce vector design work at a simpler level, say compared to something like Adobe Illustrator. So as you can see, I've opened up the online portal here and I've logged into my account. I'm going to cover just some of the basic workflow here. As you can see along the top, we've got several drop-down menus. So file for opening and making new files, importing scalable vector graphics or G-code, downloading your files. Under edit, we could select different things on the desktop here. Here it's more specific to like connecting to your machine. And then we've got a little help section that takes you to a community forum and help guides and troubleshooting. So along the top you can see, again, this is kind of the intro to Easel template that pops up when they first walk you through. And what's really nice is they do have a kind of step-by-step walkthrough for people who are learning it. So you can see we've got some basic shapes that we can add, we can move around, scale. You could probably rotate them at this point here. And I'm going to go ahead and Command Control Z back a few steps. Let's copy there of that. So what's going on there? I think we have multiple instances of this file open. So I'm going to delete that square. And you can see it's kind of like doing a live preview over here on the right side. And I'm kind of rotating, clicking with my mouse. So I can zoom in to kind of see preview. Some changes will happen here as we go through more of the tool sets. So again, like with those basic shapes, we have solids, but you can also click on them and turn them into outlines. And you can control the thickness of these lines with drill bits, which I'll get to in a little bit. But we can kind of create the cut as being on the inside or the outside, or leaving it as on the path or as again a solid. This right here is focused on the cut depth. So if we, you can kind of see, I'll zoom in on the preview, but closer to 0, this, when sent to the carver, it will barely carve into the surface, right? It's like less than 1/8 of an inch. So this is controlling the depth of the carve. So we've got 1/4 inch, and then 1/2 inch would probably be all the way through the item, right? So we've got those basic shapes, circles, triangles, squares. So you could just get right to making interesting things right off the bat. Say, like, you know, you wanted to do a logo, you could do an outline, you know, you could scale this up. You could look for some other imagery. So again, besides some of the primitives like stars, circles, triangles, there's a whole set of icons that could be loaded in here. You know, so for example, where's that little heart? Human down here. You know, so students, learners of all levels could learn to work with these scalable vector objects. I'm going to delete a few of these really quick and move on. So right now, if you look down on the lower left, you can see the two images are scaled, those different colors, and again, that has to do with the depth reading. So like the deeper the cut, the darker that image is going to be. And you can see there's actually a couple different objects there, like that hand is separate from the other object. So there's multiple little pieces here made with other basic shapes. So like the text not showing up because the cut is not very deep. So if we force that a little deeper, and or it could also be a combination of the drill bit size. So as we're moving along, we'll get to that in a second. So oops, I deleted Jeff, so we can bring that back. Nope, I want to come back. Well, we could retype something in a minute. So some of these are not cutting, and we'll get into that in just a minute. There's a pen tool, which again in Illustrator is a very challenging tool to use. So, you know, I can show you really simply. There's, you know, you're creating vector graphics, you're drawing a path, and then eventually connecting it, and you can see that shape now visible on the preview of what the printed object would look like. This is just straight lines, dot to dot, kind of point to point. Could turn it into a fill, right? So it could be a solid shape, or just keep it as an outline. I'm going to go ahead and delete that and then show another instance of the pen tool. And again, in software like Illustrator, it's much more robust, but the same kind of control over those vector points is possible here. So you can see it, there's a little section below the cut menu over here that says edit points. We click on that and it brings up control over the handles. So if I click on, you know, one of the points and then, you know, go to curved, it rounds it out. All right, so each one of these kind of angular ones, I click on it and it transforms it, and it adds the Bezier handles for adjusting the curves. And then again, we can edit and move those points. So again, this is a really nice, simple introduction to editing, you know, vector shapes with a simpler tool set than Adobe Illustrator. You can reconvert these points back into angles by clicking on them again and clicking on straight. So again, you can edit all of that with the pen tool and the edit the points. I already showed the, got one last little point there. There's a text tool. It's limited to 15 fonts for in here on the free version. If you go pro, you can add an additional 200 different fonts. And again, you could get even further beyond that if you were working in software outside and creating images and bringing them in. But you know, we could go ahead and type. Go ahead and move that text. You know, and ITEC 816. So we could create a little door sign for the classroom. Let's go back to moving. Let's select that. So again, we could move this around. We could scale. And again, we've got the depth of the cut. And again, it could be outline or fill. And the depth could be changed. So different objects and items on the same image could be adjusted. So besides, you know, some of the, we saw the icons already. So again, we can bring in lots of fun pre-existing elements that may complement, you know, a beginner's project. What's really neat though is when you get into maybe you want to bring in students who are working on their own designs, they can go ahead and import images. So there's scalable vector graphic file formats from other software like Illustrator. You have G-code, which is very common in 3D printing, an image trace, and then DXF, which is a CAD file. So I'm going to just show you image trace real quick, where, so again, if say you had students doing their own drawings, they could take pictures, they could access them through various links. I prefer the desktop, and so we've got this little tree tattoo drawing. I'm going to bring it in, check it out. So here it is, and again, the threshold kind of has to do with the level of detail, you know, that's being offered. You can see as I turn it up, it's getting more angular and kind of picking up more debris and artifacts from the image. So it could, you know, like if you had a little ink blob somewhere. So lowering that picks up less of that, smoothing, you know, rounding off, or creating more of an angled image. You could create an inversion. So one of the interesting projects could be like carving your own stamps for use in other projects. So inverting the image, you know, it'll end up cutting and removing everything except the tree and the crescent moon there. Or you could kind of work on tracing the outlines, and then again, it would theoretically carve the outlines. So I'm just going to leave it as it is, and then say import. And so again, you can see it's moved the graphic in. I'm going to go ahead and delete some of that other stuff really quick. And again, you know, how easily we can scale it up. What we haven't really looked at yet is kind of the materials panel. We'll do that in a second. So I'm just going to, you know, scale the image, kind of fit this, and, you know, maybe we can save some room for text or something. Maybe it's an award or something. There's some other interesting things before I get into. So again, you can see that cut thing. So here, let's look at how the reason why this is not coming out as detailed as it should is because of the drill bit size. So over here on the right, upper right hand side, first we'll look at the materials. You can see here we're able to swap out different types of materials that would work in the machine. So like we can go hard maple, or, you know, different multicolored plastics, or a sheet of aluminum. You can edit the size of the piece so that it matches your layout here. But the drill bit selection is kind of fundamental in why the detail is not resolved. So if we pick a much smaller, you know, drill bit, and then we close this, you can see that the level of detail is increased, whereas with the much larger bit, the level of detail possible is limited by the size of that bit. So the machine can handle those. So you use the software to select, pre-select, and prepare for that. So there's some other variables here on it's more like custom. They're preset to the materials that are kind of stacked in here, but you could customize those settings if you were more experienced. Down below, you can see, down here you can add new pieces, and again, all your files are saved to the web server. And then up here you have the upper right button where they would click and carve if this was connected to the hardware. I had an example somewhere else. Let's see if we can file open, see what's available. You know, kind of just a simple, this is another program at my school. So the Game Design Academy, you know, it's very quick and easy to do some, again, fundamentals of layout, introduction to vector-based imagery, vector-based tools, without a lot, you know, you wouldn't have to draw beforehand, but you could. You could draw and scan, or you could be working in more complex software and bringing that in as well. So again, you know, on the Carvey site, Inventables Carvey site, they offer two different things, but I'll look at the Easel thing. So I was just taking me back in again, so that's right. You'd have to upgrade to get the Pro account. So you can see there. And the other thing I wanted to touch on was, again, what's nice is, they're thinking ahead in terms of what people can do. So depending on people's level of experience, a lot of times you could be working on projects that other people have, kind of shown or previewed and carrying those out. They had some good intro projects. Where were they? There were some. It's like 3 level. It was like group projects, office, school projects. Yeah, I don't remember where it was. There were 3 levels. There was like a beginner project. It was nice. It was like you could do. Oh, now I remember. It was in the supplies. It was kind of linked to. I'm gonna go to back to previous page. All right. Well, anyways, I'll read them off. So there was a tile project where you could buy, a set of, say, 60 squares and have a class, each student do a different tile, and it'd be a group project. Intermediate project could be the custom stamp project that I mentioned, using smaller pieces, inverting the design. You could be teaching about positive and negative space with that. And then using those to print on more like a traditional thing. More advanced project was like a moving gears project. So again, you can see from things like that, or other projects are offered as downloadable files that students could get into much more advanced manufacturing. So there's this kind of nice curve from intro level applications, image making, to more complex building and assembling that is possible. So it's room for all kinds of learners. And again, what I really like about the interface is just the directness and the simplicity of that for most users. To wrap it up, I think, like something like Easel and Easel software, along with Carvey, the hardware, which we'll do a deeper dive into later, offer students of all levels and ability, a chance to interface with kind of more advanced, manufacturing, creative technologies. And again, just kind of, you can see through the ease of use, and then just kind of, when you're ready, hit carve. And students of all levels are able to kind of enter into this realm of more advanced manufacturing technologies. So well, I look forward to filling in the details on more of the actual devices when we get into the hardware review. So again, in the hardware section, we'll be covering and looking at Carvey and the self-contained unit, and then the more advanced opportunity, which is the X-Carve, which is a bigger CNC type router. So again, much more advanced, but both of which would be awesome and excellent to have in a makerspace learning environment that I am thinking of. So thanks.